Jeremy has a special interest in ways that technology can increase health equity and access to care, and we're very happy to have him here with us at our technical track. Welcome, Jeremy.
Welcome to my esteemed panel. As I look around the room, I do note that some of you are not from the healthcare world, some of you are not in the infectious diseases space. So maybe can I ask Dr. Mona to start the ball rolling and share and just define antimicrobial resistance for us, and really, why should anybody care?
Okay, thank you, Prof. Lim. My background is infectious diseases physician. So for the benefit of the audience with different background, antimicrobial resistance is actually a natural process whereby microorganisms try to evade the thing that is stopping them from multiplying. So it happens in all the microorganisms, whether it's bacteria, virus, fungi, parasites. So it's a natural process, really, but it's been accelerated by, multiple drivers, but mainly the use, or rather misuse and overuse of antimicrobials in our fight against this infection. So why is it important? Because one might say, okay, so one antibiotic, the treatment for bacteria is resistant. So we have other, choice. Why don't we just use, another antibiotic?
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Yes.
However, our options is, getting. We're running out of options, really, of choice of antibiotic, and what is left now is, if it's still sensitive, are those that we have not been using it, for a long time because of its toxicities. So we are left with, minimal choices of antimicrobials, which have lots of toxicities. It's not readily available, and maybe expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but Mona, given that we live in pandemic times, and as my Singapore Health Minister said yesterday, with the mRNA vaccines as a platform, we can design vaccines. Why antibiotics so much harder? Why can't we have a platform where we can design something that will target really specific pathogens? Why is Operation Warp Speed possible for viruses, but for antibiotics we get all tied up in knickers and so anxious about it?
Yeah. So the thing is, pharmaceutical, companies, I think they have reservations in getting more work done in getting new antibiotics in the system. This is because antibiotics, it's been discovered since by Alexander Fleming since 1928.
With penicillin. Yes.
Yeah, with penicillin, and then soon after, resistance developed. And it's not just with penicillin; it's with all the antimicrobials. They spend lots and lots of money to develop this antibiotic, antimicrobials. But then soon after, resistance developed. And then it renders this antimicrobials, not effective. So that's one thing why there is a paucity in the development of antibiotics.
But can we design antibiotics the way that we design vaccines? And where I'm coming from is how do we address the public behaviors? Because antimicrobial resistance is ultimately, as you rightly pointed out, about the abuse and misuse of antibiotics, and hence encouraging resistance. But if the public, the manufacturers of food and so on, don't quite believe that this is a problem, then the behaviors are not likely to change.
Yeah. So yes, you're right. So awareness of this problem is one way of increasing public's knowledge and awareness of this problem. In line with the Global Action Plan on AMR, one of the strategic objective is to increase awareness of this antimicrobial resistance. In fact, this topic is timely because we're actually in the middle of the World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, which started already 18 and till tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful segue to get to Tao Hong. Can I ask you, Tao Hong, given that you wrote something for the Singapore national paper, the Straits Times, earlier this week, could you share some of your own thoughts around the public engagement and the use of data technology? Because it's really beyond, and we'll talk about surveillance and about some of the scientific interventions later, but let's move upstream and focus on behaviors and where the exciting digital innovations that we've heard yesterday as well as today can be meaningfully used. But can I have your views from the article that you have written and from your position as head of the task force in Singapore?
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so the article actually focuses on some misconceptions of antimicrobial resistance. And I think what you have mentioned is very true. We have to move upstream in terms of getting awareness in terms of antimicrobial use, antimicrobial resistance. And through our work earlier and through some of the agencies we know and the researchers, we know that's what are some of the misconceptions. So the article I wrote really clarifies some of the misconceptions that the public have, both on resistance as well as the use of antimicrobials. In terms of digitalization, I suppose you'll move on to that discussion in quite a bit. But I suppose there are many ways or many things that we could use in terms of getting big data, digitalization to help us with our fight against AMR. And most of it, or much of it, will be in the form of getting comprehensive surveillance and up-to-date real-time surveillance data. But I think I will stop there first.
Okay. Yeah. And maybe can I turn to Dr. Regina? And we're still talking about public education and behavior change. Where's the role of digital public health? Because we are in a digital public health conference, and this morning Dr. Ang spoke about digital nudges and the incredible work that Brunei has been doing through really Brew Health. So what are your thoughts around this, and how can we harness digital public health modalities better in the fight against antimicrobial resistance?
Yeah. So I think there's a large role of digitalization and communicating this risk to the public in a manner that they're able to digest bits and pieces of correct information so that they're able to use antimicrobials correctly, prudently. Um, Social media is a really big platform right now for information campaigns. So just as long as we're able to have good advocates who will be spreading correct information, I think it will be a big boost to the awareness campaign that we're trying to do in an effort to fight antimicrobial resistance. Yes.
And maybe can we quickly go around for the countries represented, Singapore, Brunei, as well as the Philippines. Advocates do not naturally emerge. Platforms to disseminate these messages on social media and other digital platforms don't naturally happen. What are you in your individual, organizational, national capacities doing to help promote public education through digital platforms? Maybe we start with Brunei since it's the most kilat in digital public health. Please, Doctor.
Okay. As an example, with this week itself, this World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, we have been taking advantage of the social media in Brunei. So we've taken advantage of publicizing the awareness through radio interviews. Just this morning, my colleague Dr. Natalie just went on Rampai Pagi. It's live program in Brunei, and also making use of the Instagram, MOH, Facebook, online. So that's one way
Okay.
of
Yeah.
disseminating
Thank you.
awareness. Yeah.
And what about the Philippines,
Mm.
Dr.
So
Regina?
yes, so I think it's important that we package our risk communication statements in a very attractive manner, because like your first question, why is it important and what is it for the general public? So it's very very crucial that we in the Philippines we've tried like initiating contests, like competitions, creative competitions, making the best blog, the best TikToks, things like that seems to really make the public more engaged and more attracted to the messages. They're able to internalize it and produce some additional works that will cascade the information.
Okay, excellent. And what about Singapore, Tao Hong?
Yeah, I will raise two examples. So in within the hospitals, traditionally we used to hold talks during the World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, and the audience is the number of audience can be limited because we used to meet physically in a room, and you attract 100 people, 200 people. But since the pandemic, then what we have done is do a lot of more video conferencing. So we have webinars, and through webinars and contribution by each hospitals in giving the talks, we could actually get more 10, 15 times more audience as compared to what we used to do traditionally. So that has helped accelerate in spreading the message. Secondly, through health promotion boards work, this year, World Antimicrobial Awareness Week, HPB has engaged some social influencers, media that they have quite strong presence on social media to help with the messaging as well. So I think these are a couple of ways Singapore has done in
Okay,
this era.
yeah, great.
Thank you.
And thank you to the panel. I want to switch gears now to surveillance, right? And what Dr. Ang shared this morning around using data to track the number of steps, the behaviors, and so on. How is the infectious disease community using the digital tools we have today that we did not have just 10, 15 years ago? And with the pandemic, there is much more acceptability. So how are we using these tools to help us in the fight against antimicrobial resistance? Anyone would like to start? Yes.
So I can start. Allow me to be candid. So in Brunei, in our setting, we have been having difficulty in getting the AMR surveillance,
Mhm.
and also antimicrobial usage surveillance. And recently, I am excited because we have been working hard with EVIT,
Yes.
in trying to use the digital technology in getting this surveillance going. In fact, recently we have a mock-up. So I am excited to see that we can envision that soon that we'll be able to see where the burden of antimicrobial resistance,
Yes.
AMR, in Brunei, and related to antimicrobial usage. So one, there's so many lessons learned from COVID-19, and one of it is this digital technology that now, we can think of adapting it to other
Yes.
and expanding it to
Okay.
other
Yeah.
use like AMR.
Okay. And maybe Tao Hong, can you speak about Singapore? And I'll share this that in 2005, I was involved in a hospital level antimicrobial stewardship program. And it was very primitive, very manual. Took the inpatient medication records, looked at the disease versus the antibiotic prescribed, and if it was deemed by the pharmacist and by the infectious disease physician to be inappropriate, they would leave a little love note, right, to say, doctor, you may want to consider prescribing these other antibiotics because these are the relevant clinical practice guidelines and scientific papers. Now we fast forward to 2022, 2023, where we can turbocharge this digitally. What is Singapore doing, Tao Hong? And please don't disappoint me and malu Singapore by saying it hasn't changed since 2005.
Well, I think I have to be really frank about it, and some of it is really still a very manual process
Wow,
of
okay. Stop. Please don't. No, please carry on. I'm just teasing you.
well, yeah. So it is still a rather manual process, but what we have started discussion on is using AI technology to mine data and mine, the language from the case notes to see which patients are more at risk of AMR or which patients are actually having inappropriate antibiotics to be prescribed. And so that's where we are moving towards in a rather infancy stage. And hopefully this will number one reduce the amount of resources or manpower needed to do this manual work that you have just described. And number two is to increase the accuracy of and the fidelity of our recommendations to make sure that our recommendations are indeed correct and accurate for the patients to improve patients' outcome.
Great. So soon enough, in the hospital electronic medical records, Big Brother will be watching. It will tell ignorant surgeons like really myself, are you sure you want to prescribe this? Right? And then we'll have to click yes 3 times to be able to override the recommendation. Okay. And what's happening in the Philippines, Regina?
So in the Philippines, do you know there's like more than like 1,000 hospitals that we needed to train for AMS, and we used to do it like face to face, like maybe just about 10 to 15 hospitals each time. So that whole process took us more than like a year to do it. But we with the COVID, we shifted to an online asynchronous type of um, training. So we were able to finish all the hospitals over the last 2 years during the COVID pandemic. So that was an incredible an achievement. Additionally, many of the hospitals, as you said, shifted from the primitive way to more sophisticated, intensely
Yes.
IT related kinds of information. So like the AMS team wouldn't have to go from patient to patient, chart to chart anymore. They just need to sit down in a room and like be able to assess how people are prescribing in the hospital. So that saves a lot of time, and that certainly improve our ability to measure our antimicrobial usage.
Okay, no, that's really exciting. I am mindful we have an audience in the room. I want to open up. Are there any questions that our young friends in the audience and not so young friends would like to ask? Wow, first chance the audience gets to ask a question. Nobody asks. Yes, young man over there. Wow, when I say young man, everybody look behind. How can?
Thank you very much, this esteemed panelists. I do have a question here. So, based on what you're saying, and I'm very mindful of the context of things like fake news and stuff like that, how would we actually improve public's awareness on AMR, and how would we actually educate the public in a way that bears in mind the fact of fake news and social media and all that sort of thing?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question around what WHO calls the infodemic. And I think, Regina, you have spoken about pushing out correct messages in user-friendly ways that resonate. But what about correcting the wrong information? And this happens on closed networks like WhatsApp and Telegram, as well as open ones like really Twitter. So what are your countries doing about this? Who wants to start? And don't be shy. Usually Singapore very gian to be first. So Tao Hong, can I ask you to go first?
Right, thank you. Well, I don't think I have seen a lot of fake news or deliberate false information on AMR. I think most of the time it is truly misconceptions instead of truly putting out information on AMR. I think that probably the time has not come for this to happen a lot to AMR yet, and that's my own sense.
Okay.
Mhm.
So far we haven't, at least in the Singapore setting, haven't had to do anything really large scale because this doesn't seem to be a major challenge. What about in Brunei?
I have to say, at least we haven't seen it. Probably because we haven't been looking at heaters.
Okay, good
So
point. Yes.
it hasn't come to us at least
Yeah.
for us to correct it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Regina, in the Philippines?
In the Philippines, I think it's important that there are sources that are reliable. So, like, usually it's the Department of Health, our Department of Health, who would initiate most of the messages, the World Health Organization, and of course, the universities, the health facilities. Most of the time, if these are the sources of information, the, the general public would believe them and try in the best way that they can change behavior.
Okay. And we are down to our last few minutes. Can I just ask all of you, and this is a free for all, what would success look like? Because we have described many efforts that we're undertaking, but how do we know that we are moving in the right direction? Are there are there biosurveillance methods on MRSA rates or other pathogens? Yeah.
Um, so I think successes will not be seen um, overtly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, AMR surveillance
Yes.
would definitely, help us see the trends, and if there's an improvement
Yeah.
following,
And
initiatives and all that.
And sorry, Monam, given that we have a mixed audience, can you describe what AMR surveillance is and what success looks like? Like, are we tracking a particular number of pathogens for resistant versus sensitive
Yeah.
species, and how the proportions change over time?
So there's two sort of like surveillance that we're talking about. There's
Yes.
global surveillance and
Mhm.
there's also local surveillance. So for antimicrobial resistance surveillance, it's more lab kind of surveillance,
Okay.
looking at
Mhm.
the sensitivity patterns of antimicrobials
Okay.
as to the different pathogens. And globally, we have the GLASS platform, global antimicrobial surveillance system, and it would be looking at the different sensitivity patterns or resistant patterns of different countries.
Okay.
So globally, we could see the trends of whether we are seeing increasing resistance for that particular
Okay.
pathogens.
Yeah.
And then locally as well, we can adapt that and expand the types of pathogens
Okay.
that we're
Yeah.
looking at.
So locally, how is Brunei doing? Getting better? Getting worse?
That's the thing that I was
So don't
saying
know.
that candidly,
Okay.
we have been having
Okay.
difficulty. We have been
So
having
it's a
challenges.
challenge for your technology partners who are in the
Yes,
room. So this time next year's conference, you'll be able to update everyone on how Brunei is doing.
Yes,
Okay,
hopefully.
very
So
good.
that's
Okay.
the challenge that I'm putting ahead.
All right. Okay.
Really.
So the gauntlet has been thrown down. All our avid friends, where are you? Put your hands up, please. Okay, so 12 months, the clock is ticking.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and what about Singapore? Right? Are we on the right track or are we getting worse? Tao Hong, I think you are frozen.
Yeah, I think to track success, it comes in.
Oops.
I think success. Could you hear me? I think success comes in different levels.
Okay, yes, please go ahead.
I think success comes in different levels. Yeah, I think success comes in different levels. If we are talking about public awareness, then we will track whether their awareness has increased over time. And if you are looking at the other aspect is the amount of antimicrobial use, the volume that we use in the country, and then if it goes down, then that is also considered success. We can also look at appropriateness, whether each prescription is appropriate or not. And of course, the long-term goal is then ultimately a reduction in resistance, and
Yes.
that will be the
Okay.
ultimate success, and that is the thing that we are all
Yeah.
going for.
Okay. Great. I'm afraid we have run out of time. Can I ask Regina to have the final word? Given that this is an ASEAN conference, what would you hope that we as ASEAN do? Not as Philippines, not as Singapore, but as ASEAN. What can ASEAN do together in antimicrobial resistance?
Yeah, you know what happens in one country eventually ends up in all other countries within a region. So we share many things, including resistant organisms
So
that
we share bugs with
may
each other, right?
right with that
Okay.
threaten human health and animal health and the environment. So it's very important that everybody gets engaged into this in a one health approach. Like let's work together and collaborate both in research, implementation, and policies. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Regina. It's a politically very correct answer, so thank you very much. But as the naughty moderator, let me have the final word that I hear all of you as eminent infectious disease experts who are passionate about this issue. I do fear, to be very candid, as a public health specialist, that the public health world is not doing enough. That the sense that I'm getting is that there are a lot of very heroic individual efforts, but the system has not fully come on board. And if the system doesn't move, as what you're seeing with COVID-19 pandemic, we are all then at risk. And as long as the health system is fragile and not bought in, we will not be able to address this satisfactorily at national or at regional levels. And we really have to. I thought Tao Hong wrote a very nice article that I'll ask the organizers to share with all the participants. You can share the link because this is a problem much like climate change. If we all think it's someone else's problem, by the time it's everybody's problem, it'll be too late. And on that somewhat sober note, thank you very much to our three panelists. You've done a great job. It's now time for the system to step up and do its part. So thank you, everybody.